Thank you.
Welcome to our study of the Psalms here at Prince of Peace. Tonight we are focusing on Psalms 75 through 80. And so we're going to begin our devotion. We usually do it with a psalm. When we're with the whole group, we sing it back and forth, but that's found that really hard to do on Zoom. So if you all just want to follow along, I'm going to use Psalm 80 as our devotion tonight. And then what I'm hoping to do tonight is to do a very deep dive into Psalm 78, which is a 72 verse long psalm about the history of Israel, but there's some really interesting stuff in it. So I'm going to look at Psalm 80 as our devotion, do a deep dive into Psalm 78, and then if there are other questions or other things you want to look at, we can do that as well. All right. So let's use Psalm 80 as our prayer. Give ear, O shepherd of Israel, you who lead Joseph like a flock. You are enthroned upon the cherubim. Shine forth before Ephraim and Benjamin and Manasseh. Stir up your might and come to save us. Restore us, O God. Let your face shine that we may be saved. O Lord God of hosts, how long will you be angry with your people's prayer? You have fed them with the bread of tears and given them tears to drink in full measure. You make us the scorn of our neighbors. Our enemies laugh among themselves. Restore us, O God of hosts. Let your face shine that we may be saved. You brought a vine out of Egypt. You drove out the nations and planted it. You cleared the ground for it, and it took deep root and filled the land. The mountains were covered with its shade, the mighty cedars with its branches. It sent its branches to the sea and its shoots to the river. Why then have you broken down its walls, so that all who pass along the way pluck its fruit? The boar from the forest ravages it, and all that move in the field feed on it. Turn again, O God of hosts. Look down from heaven and see. Have regard for this vine, the stock that your right hand planted. They have burned it with fire, they have cut it down. May they perish at the rebuke of your countenance. But let your hand be upon the one at your right hand, the one whom you made strong for yourself. Then he will turn back from you. He will never turn back from you. Give us life, and we will call on your name. Restore us, O Lord God of hosts. Let your face shine that we may be saved. Okay, Psalm 80. You'll notice that 3 times in this psalm that refrain occurs. Restore us, O God, let your face shine that we may be saved. This idea of God's appearance, eminence, shining upon us. The right hand, the kind of hand of blessing. You see that down in verse 17. The right hand is always the hand of blessing in the Bible. The left hand is the hand of cursing. All right. You agree with the right hand, left hand. Okay. And that's true throughout the Bible. But it retraces some of the history of Israel. You didn't know that?
No, I didn't.
Well, your Latin will also teach you this, that the left hand is the bad hand, because in Latin, the word for left-handedness is a la sinister. In Spanish, izquierda, okay, meaning bad, right? Not wanted. Izquierda, okay? So this left hand is bad. That's why they tried to force people to write with their right hand in days of old, because this was a hand of blessing. Also, in the Semitic culture, the Muslim culture, the left hand was also used for hygiene purposes. Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, my dad had. Yeah.
So if you extended your left hand to someone, that was insulting, because that was the hand that was used for the bathroom. The right hand was the used hand for greeting, for eating, and things like that. So again, different hand. And so we see this throughout the Bible. The right hand of God is the hand of blessing. All right. And we have the Lord of hosts there. We're singing this right now in church. Whenever we sing Lord God of Sabaoth, we're doing that right now in church for our Holy Holy. That's the Lord of God of hosts, the God of everything. Okay. All right. Anything on Psalm 80?
Well, just kind of notice that Israel seems to be in distress in most of these Psalms today.
Always, yes.
Always.
And in our lesson today, just to pick up on that, in our particular lesson today, only Psalm 78 and Psalm 80 were used in previous worship resources. Psalm 75, 76, 77, and 79 were excluded from most hymnals because they're not particularly, what I want to say, appropriate for worship. Because it's about slamming the enemy or getting slammed or whatever. So those songs were sort of put to the side. All right. Anything else about Psalm 80? So what I really want to do is I want you to have your Bibles at the ready. And I really want to do sort of a deep dive into Psalm 78. There's a lot here. There's a lot of history here that we can take a look at. And it's just sort of a big, long, fun psalm that also teaches us about the history of Israel. Many songs that we sing, and this is even true for the American Revolution and other things, that songs were often sung as a way to tell a history. I mean, just think about the Star Spangled Banner, if you can't think of any other song where this works. That tells the story, right? Francis Scott Key is in the Baltimore Bay. He's on a ship. He's afraid that the fort is going to fall there. And yet, when he looks up, the Star Spangled Banner is still there, right? Everybody with me on this? Yes. So often, some of these patriotic songs, but also songs that Israel sang, help to recount their history. Because when you both sing something and say it, it plants a history. So these psalms, and we see it not just in Psalm 78, but especially in Psalm 78, when you sang the history, you remembered it. Mary.
Well, it was an oral history because they didn't have books and they didn't read, but they absorbed it by hearing it and singing it.
Yeah, I always say it was both an oral and an oral history.
Oral, exactly.
Exactly.
They heard the history of their people.
Exactly. By the way, we missed you on Friday night.
Something came up.
Everything okay? Okay.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
You're okay though?
Not me.
Okay.
It was my duty.
We just missed you. No, I understand. All right. So let's sort of do a deep dive into 78 because there's a lot of history here. And we can look a little bit at some of that too as we make our way through. But what I'm going to sort of take little chunks of it here, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. It is a long psalm, so fasten your seatbelts. There is a lot here, but let's start with Psalm 78, and I'll just do the first 4 verses to begin with. You'll notice it's a psalm of God's goodness and Israel's ingratitude. There's a theme for the people of Israel. God blesses them, and they're still not happy about it, right? That's not a new thing. All right. But I actually think of it as one of those historical psalms in which we learn about, the Israel people and what they faced, their history. So it's probably the longest historical psalm we have in the Bible. But we'll sort of take it in 4 verse chunks here and then sort of look at it. So the first 4 verses of Psalm 78, give ear, O my people. We just mentioned oral and oral. To my teaching, incline your ears to the word of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. Okay. By the word parable is the same word that's used for the book of Proverbs. So in the Old Testament, we have Psalms, and the next book is Proverbs. That word in Hebrew is masah, but it means parable. So if you think about the Proverbs, it's sort of a parable, a teaching, if you will, right? Okay, and so here we have, I open mouth in a parable or a proverb. I will utter dark sayings from of old, things that we have heard and known that our ancestors have told us. We will not hide them from their children. We will tell to the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord and his might and the wonders that he has done. Okay, so this idea of listening to what God has to say to us, okay, and also this idea of teaching their children, okay, was very important in Hebrew culture. So if you put sort of a bookmark there where we are, I just want to emphasize this by looking back at Deuteronomy chapter 6. So if you put a bookmark in where we are. And if you look at Deuteronomy chapter 6, everybody with me, or give an okay sign when you're with me?
Yeah.
And we're going to look at verse 4. Okay, starting at verse 4. All right, everybody there?
Mhm.
All right, now
Yep.
whoever can get this question correct gets 500 extra points in the kingdom of God. Okay, so it starts out, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might." What is that normally called? Does anybody know? You know your yes, Barbara?
Shema.
Yes.
What did you
500 extra points for Barbara. The Shema. So a Orthodox Jew or a practicing Jew in the morning always starts with this. Shema Israel in Hebrew. Shema, listen, hear. Shema means to hear. Hear, O Israel. So if you ever go to the Holy Land and you're traveling overnight, you will notice all the Orthodox Jews will get up at sunrise and you'll hear throughout the cabin, Shema Israel. Okay? Hear, O Lord, the God, your God is one God, God alone. You shall love the Lord God with all your heart. They're saying it in Hebrew, but it's called the Shema. Okay? Means to hear. All right? Very good, Barbara.
That's
1,000 extra points. Now, where did you learn that? How did you know that, Barbara?
I don't know where I learned it,
Yep.
but I've got that note in my Bible. I wrote it in there.
Oh.
Okay, good. Exactly. It's the Shema. So it is practiced every day by Orthodox Jews. All right. Then it's the next words that I want to look at for our reference today. Keep these words that I command today in your heart. Recite them to your children and talk about them when you're at home and when you are away and when you lie down and when you rise. Bind them as a sign on your hand. Fix them as an emblem on your forehead and write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. All right. Some of you may know, if you've been in a Jewish person's home, that up near the portal of the door, there'll be a little, sometimes it's pottery, but that is this lesson from Deuteronomy. Sometimes Orthodox Jews will touch that on the way out, in or out of the house, but you will see that. Often you notice that. Sometimes when they will go down to the temple to pray, they have something, I think they're called phylacteries, and they will actually bind that on their head with a little leather pouch, or sometimes on their arm. Okay. But this idea of repeating this tradition over and over again to the children and to the children of your children and to the next generation, right, was very important, okay, to the people of Israel. They wanted to make sure not to forget. But of course, the interesting thing is every time they forget, even though they're told this over and over again, they wander off and seek their own needs. Okay, so this idea of remembering and pass it down is very important. Okay, and it comes from Deuteronomy 6, verse 4, normally known, as Barbara says, as the Shema. Listen, hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one God. All right, let's now flip back to Psalm 78. We'll do a couple of more verses here. He established a decree in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, verse 5, which he commanded our ancestors to teach to their children. The next generation might know them, the children yet unborn, and rise up and tell them to their children, so that they should set their hope in God. Now, if you think about that right there, that's 5 generations, right? The fathers, let's count them, the fathers, their children, the generation to come, and their children, okay? Right? So fathers, their children, the generation to come, their children, and their children. Are you with me? 5 different generations, right? If you look there, okay? which he commanded his ancestors teach to their children, the next generation, the children yet unborn, and rise up and tell them to their children. Okay, 5 generations there, right?
And a generation is usually 30 years, so
20 years. I mean, it depends how you count it.
yeah.
In the United States,
So that,
we
well,
usually
that's
say it's
150 years there.
But yes, and I think the point is teach this. Don't forget it. Repeat it over and over again. Know your history. And of course, we see times when they don't seem to know their history at all. And yet they're told to be told this. All right. So, verse 7. So they should set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. They should not be like their ancestors, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation whose heart was not steadfast, whose spirit was not faithful to God, right? Don't be like that stiff-necked people, okay? And then verse 9 here, we'll go on. The Ephraimites, okay? The Ephraimites, generally Ephraim, if you're just thinking about the different tribes of Israel, is generally thought of as the strongest tribe, okay? We think it was probably the largest tribe of all the 12 tribes, Ephraim. All right. So we see it here recognized. The children of Ephraim armed for battle with the bow, but they turned back on the day of battle. They did not keep God's covenant, but refused to walk according to his law. They forgot what he had done and the miracles he had shown them. In the sight of their ancestors, he worked marvels in the land of Egypt, in the fields of Zon. Zone is that area up in the Nile Delta there where they would cross the Red Sea. Okay. He divided the sea and let them pass through it, made the water stand up like a heap. I love that. We have different depictions of that in the Old Testament, but this idea that the water was like a heap. Okay, it was heaped up.
Make a heap of
on
water.
the
That's what
side.
the Cecil
Exactly.
Mill.
Yeah.
He DeMille, right? He roared it up in a heap there. Okay.
Charlton
Um,
Heston and all.
Right. Okay. And
Right.
here we have this is the recounting of the Exodus experience here, starting at verse 13. He divided the sea and let them pass through it, made the water stand like a heap. In the daytime, he led them with a cloud, right? And at night with a fiery light. He split, notice here, plural, rocks open in the wilderness and gave them drink abundantly as from the deep. He made streams come out of the rock and caused waters to flow down the river. Okay? So we remember this because there were 2 rocks, right? I made notes of it here. I'll forget where I found it. Okay? So there was 2 rocks, right? At Rephidim and at Kadesh, where Moses, they were whining, they're in the desert, they don't have enough water, so he takes it and he hits the rock and outflows the water. Okay, it's sort of an interesting place, but let's just take a look at one of them if you want to. So keep your marks there and let's look at Numbers 20 verses 1 to 6. So again, we're looking back at these 5 books of the Old Testament, known as the Pentateuch. But if you look back at Numbers 20 verse 6. So keep your place.
Psalm 20.
Chapter 20, verse 1. I'm sorry.
Of Numbers, not Psalms.
20.
Yeah.
Numbers. What did I?
I don't
I'm
know.
sorry. The book of Numbers. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. The book of Numbers, chapter 20. So the 4th book of the Old Testament.
I don't. Yeah, I got it. Okay.
And I just want you to see how this idea is sort of repeated over and over again. But let's take a look at here. The waters of Meribah. The Israelites, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zin. By the way, this is Zin as in Mary Zay, not sin, but a Zin, and not the wine, by the way, either. In the first month, and the people stayed in Kadesh. Miriam died there and was buried there. Miriam is who? The sister of Moses, right? She was the one who danced when they got over to the other side of the Red Sea. She got on her tambourine and said, ha, 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 we made it, you don't, blah, 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 right? It's a sort of an egotistic scene in the Bible, but it's sort of fun too. Verse 2, now there was no water for the congregation, so they gathered together against Moses and against Aaron. They're the leaders, right? If you're irritated about something, take the leaders out. The people quarreled with Moses and said, What that we had died when our kindred died before the Lord. Why have you brought the assembly of the Lord into this wilderness for us and our livestock to die here? Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to bring us to this wretched place? It is no place. It is no place for grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, and there's no water to drink. Then Moses and Aaron went away from the assembly to the entrance of the tent of meeting. They fell on their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the staff and assemble the congregation, you and your brother Aaron, and command the rock before their eyes to yield its water. Thus you shall bring water out of the rock for them. Thus you shall provide drink for the congregation and their livestock. Verse 9. So Moses took the staff from before the Lord as he had commanded him. Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly before the rock and said to them, listen, you rebels, Shema, right? Shema Israel. Shall we bring water for you out of this rock? Then Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock twice with his staff. Water came out abundantly, and the congregation and their livestock drank. Okay. Now there gets into Moses a little irritated they didn't trust him, but at any rate, this idea of water from the rock. And by the way, I don't know if you heard on Sunday, at least here in our parish, but we had a baptism. And during the baptism, there's a reference to this water from the rock, right?
Really?
That water out of that rock. It's in the baptismal service on how water gushed out of that rock. And of course, again, if you think about it, the miracle of the people of Israel is their impossibilities. How are we going to escape Pharaoh and his armies? There's a sea there. What are we going to do? A miracle. We split the water, we go across, the water falls upon Pharaoh and all his troops, and we live. We get out into the wilderness. There's nothing to drink. Why have you dragged us out here to die? He goes to a rock. And you're thinking, who gets water from a rock? God gets water from a rock. Why?
God is my
because
rock.
our God is a rock. Ratha rock, right? Because our God can do amazing things. He can save us from the Egyptians, who clearly could have just slaughtered us. He can bring water from the rock, but yet there will be more. Because of course the people aren't satisfied when they just get water to drink. Now they want to know where's the salad and where's the food and etc. And we're going to see where that comes in. Exactly. They're not happy. All right. Okay, with where we are, let's go back to Psalm 78. And again, Psalm 78 is repeating what has done. And of course, once again, the people are stubborn and they're not, what I want to say, they're not happy with God, even though at every turn of the way, God continues to bless them. Okay? So they want water. Moses gives them water. And look at verse 17 of Psalm 78. Yet they sinned still more against him, rebelling against the Most High in the desert. They tested God in their heart by demanding the food they craved. One version of this that I read this week in preparation for this study, it did not translate as the food they craved, but had the food of their fancy. I love that. The food of their fancy. Isn't that sort of an interesting way of saying it? But it's the food they wanted, right? Okay. So they're out there. Moses brought them. They get water. They're still not happy. Now they want food. Okay. So they spoke against God, saying, can God spread a table in the wilderness? Okay. By the way, what does that recall any psalm we've already been over? Let me say it to you this way. God spread the table before me in the presence of my enemies. My cup runneth over. Psalm 23. Right. The 23rd Psalm, where God spreads this table. So again, can God spread a table in the wilderness? Even though he struck out the water, so the water gushed out, our torrents overflowed, can he also give bread or provide meat for his people? And the thing about this is the way the people of Israel are saying it, they are mocking God,
Yeah.
which if I'm the Almighty, I might be a tad offended at that. Oh, so all you did was save us, and then you gave us water. Well, how about we get some food too, if Mr. Smarty Pants who let us out here in the wilderness? You see what's going on here? They are a rebellious people. They're not happy. Okay. I mean, you might think he's given us water. Now maybe we ought to set some traps and get our own food. Or maybe you should use the water to plant some things or something. But no, they just turn against God. So, verse 21, when the Lord heard this, he was full of rage. And I just want you to sort of understand that verse, because this is the history of the people of Israel, right? God does something for them. They're satisfied for a nanosecond, and then they begin to grouch. And then God is irritated with them again, over and over and over again. Now, some people might say that this is a little bit like the life of faith, that
Life of
provides, like the life of faith. That in our faith life, we have moments where we feel all the blessings of God, but then when things aren't going our way, particularly, we wonder, where's God? And then all of a sudden, oh, okay, well, that blessing just came my way. But we don't often put it all together. And what I mean by this is that people of faith are usually people that are in the moment, or maybe I should say people who don't have much faith, live in the moment and don't see how God has been worked on your whole life. You only see what's happening to me right now.
Yes.
And what we're trying to teach, and what the people of Israel are trying to teach the other generations, is that God is a God who loves us not for the moment, but for lifetimes, for a generation, for eons. All right. That's how God loves comes to us. And yes, there are going to be moments of disappointment and moments where things don't go our way. But sometimes you have to step back and look at your whole life and say, what are other ways that God is with us? And I think what's being taught, I'm not saying you have to agree with everything that's being taught, is what's being taught is that a people of faith are those who remember these things and teach them, so that when you have your moments when you're wondering where is God in all this, you can also remember the times that God was with you. With me?
Yes, and
That's why
they never say thank you.
Well,
Hey,
sometimes
thanks,
they do.
God.
They do.
I got the weather.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
they do sometimes, and sometimes they praise God and offer sacrifice. But more often than not, after a moment or two of blessing, they get irritated again and whiny along the way. Yes. Good thing we're not like that, because we are always have perfect faith. But if you've ever thought about this too, just even from a liturgical standpoint, why do we constantly read these old stories? Because these old stories of faith are new again. They're true in our life. God heals 10 lepers and only one comes back to give thanks. The other 9 just go on with their life. I mean, all of these stories that we see in both the Old and New Testament, they recur over and over again. And like I said, that's what I mean by the life of faith, because actually the life of faith includes both faith and faithlessness. It's sort of like
my annotation for this
EKG.
This psalm is the story of God's great deeds and his people's faithlessness.
Exactly.
Right. It hits that spot.
It's always, what have you done for me lately? Right, exactly.
What have you done for me lately? That's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So verse 21. Therefore, when the Lord heard the people whining, he was full of rage. A fire was kindled against Jacob. His anger mounted against Israel. And again, this is biblical parallelism. Jacob means the whole people of Israel. Israel means the whole people of Jacob, means the Jewish people, right?
Yeah.
Because they had no faith in God and did not trust his saving power. Yet, once again, God commanded the skies above and opened the doors of heaven. And he rained down on them manna to eat and gave them the grain of heaven. Mortals ate the bread of angels. I love this. He sent them food in abundance. He caused the east wind to blow in the heavens. What's odd about the east wind? It's the same here in Ohio. Come on, you meteorologists.
Well, it doesn't
The common
normally
wind
go
from the
that way
west.
here.
Exactly. And same there, right? If a wind is coming from the east, it's coming off the desert. It usually came from the west. So it was a different kind of wind. Just like, I don't know if you noticed this in Ohio, but if the winds come from the east, the leaves on your trees look different because they don't grow that way. They grow with the leaves coming from the west, especially if you have a silver maple. What you'll notice is that in a normal day when it's windy, you don't see it. But when there's a wind from the wrong direction, the east, you'll see that silver maple all of a sudden looks silver because the back of the leaf looks different. So then you know there's a real storm because something's out of whack with the weather. In this part of the Middle East, exactly. In this part of the Middle East, the wind went from west to east. So here we have an east wind blowing the heavens, and by his power he led up the south wind, also rare. He rained flesh upon them like dust, winged birds like the sand of the sea. He let them fall within their camp, all around their dwellings. They ate and were well filled, for he gave them what they craved. He gave them the food of their fancy, as one version I saw said it. But before they had satisfied their craving, while their mouth the food was still in their mouth, the anger of God was against them, and he killed the strongest of them and laid low the flower of Israel. Okay. Just so we're clear here, what's being described in this part is that God gave them what they wanted, but God was still irritated. So God, in a sense, took some retribution here. I'm not saying that's what God did, but I'm just saying that's what it says in the story, right? That God said, while they were still mouthful of food, God struck some of them down for their disobedience. Okay. I'm not saying it's good, bad, or ugly. I'm just saying that's what it says in the text, right? Okay. Now let's go on here a little bit. Verse 32. In spite of all this, go ahead, Catherine.
Did I miss something? I mean, it's like, he gave them and gave them and gave them and gave them. And then, and they didn't act grateful. So he gave them more. And why didn't he just stop giving?
Well, do you notice any time within this from, verse 21 through 31, is there any moment in there where it says they gave thanks? Or they appreciated what? No. They just sat down and filled their bellies is what they did. Right. So it sort of irritated God.
In the morning, I give thanks.
Right. But in this particular instance, even though they groused and then finally God delivered, there was no thanksgiving before they just sat and pulled their mouth. So because of that, this text says that God struck some of them dead because of it. I don't necessarily believe but that's what they think happened. Okay, you with me? It's the text. Yeah. That's what the text says.
I got it.
Well, there's two different versions of that story in the earlier books. One of them, he feeds them, and in Numbers, he has quail come down so that it's up to their waists on the ground and it's rotting around them, and it is not so pleasant a story there.
Right. I mean, if you ever want to look this up, this is also in the book of Numbers. It's Numbers 11, 1 to 3 is where it is. And again, God was angry with them. Okay. And so they got, yes, God whacked them for it. All right. Good or for ill. Okay. That's what it said. All right. I had one version I thought was interesting. They said, while the food was still in their mouths, I came upon one version that said, while the meat was still between their teeth before it was chewed, the wrath of the Lord aroused against the people. The Lord struck the people with a great plague. Okay. Again, I'm not saying it's good, bad, or different. I'm just repeating the story. All right. Now let's move ahead here a little bit. In spite of all this, they still sinned. In spite of everything they did not believe in his wonders. So he made their days vanish like a breath and their years in terror. When he killed them, they sought for him. They repented and sought God earnestly. So finally, now they turn around. They remembered suddenly that God was their God, the most high God, their Redeemer. But they flattered him with their mouths. They lied to him with their tongues. Their heart was still not steadfast toward him. They were not true to his covenant. Yet God, being compassionate, forgave them for their iniquity, did not destroy them. Often he restrained his anger and did not stir up all his wrath. So we have this sort of weird thing. God disciplines them, but he doesn't utterly destroy them. All right. He paddles them. It's a little warning. Yes, exactly. All right. All right.
Can I chime in just for a sec?
Sure,
I have the Lutheran study Bible, so I get the interpretations at the bottom. But what it says is that they did not. Well, first they say, verse 32. Okay, verse 32. They say, and they still sinned, and then in italics, and they did not believe God would give them the land he promised. And that was all about land.
Right. I mean, it's sort of like, if you think of Israel, they're like a disobedient child. You bring them out there, you give what they need, they still kick you in the shins and whine and everything else. And because of that, you think about the whole group of people, they are disciplined in some ways. From the account here, it means that some of them were killed, but not as a group, not utterly abandoned. Okay? Because if you look then at verse 39, this is the interesting part. He should have known this from the book of Genesis, that God remembers that they were but flesh, right? Mortal. A wind that passes does not come again. How often, verse 40, they rebelled against him in the wilderness and grieved him in the desert. They tested God again and again and provoked the Holy One of Israel. I mean, you'd think God could have just slaughtered the whole lot of them, right? That's the message, but he didn't. They didn't. They did not keep in mind his power on the day when he redeemed them from his foe, when he displayed his signs in Egypt, and his miracles in the field of Zon. Zon is that area in the Nile Delta of near the Red Sea. And then we're going to recount here this portion of Exodus where Moses, you may remember Charlton Heston doing this, of the great plagues, right? So I'm just going to repeat it because it's obvious. He turned their rivers to blood so they could not drink of their streams. He set among them swarms of flies, which devoured them, and frogs, which destroyed them. He gave their crops to the caterpillar, and the fruit of their labors to the locust. He destroyed their vines with hail, and their sycamores with frost. He gave over their cattle to the hail, and their flocks to the thunderbolts. He let loose on them his fierce anger, wrath, indignation, distress, a company of destroying angels. He made a path for his anger. He did not spare them from death, but gave them their lives over to the plague. He struck all the firstborn in Egypt, the first issue of their strength in the tents of Ham. Then he led his people out like sheep. Okay? If you remember Charlton Heston, he did all these things. How many plagues are there normally in the book of Exodus?
And I think
10. 10.
Okay.
There are 10 plagues. All right. And we have 6 of them that are mentioned here, right? The plagues that are not mentioned here are let's see here. We have 4 that aren't mentioned. The gnats, they're not mentioned, are they? Locusts are mentioned, but not the gnats.
I hate gnats.
There's boils on the livestock, but not the death on the livestock, and the boils on people.
Yeah.
And then the 4th one that's not mentioned, remember, there's a day of darkness over the whole land, right? Those 4 plagues aren't mentioned. Okay, then the final plague, or the greatest plague, was when Moses said, the firstborn of all Egypt will die. And then if you remember the movie, or if you remember your Bible, then finally the Pharaoh relents and says, get out, because even his own son was killed. But the Jewish people put blood on their doorposts so that the angel of death passed over, why they call it the Passover, and did not visit death upon the Israelis, and they left. All right. But 10 plagues culminating in the Passover, and we see that here. Okay. So if you look verse 51 of the Psalm, he struck all the firstborn in Egypt, the first issue. That's the 10th and worst plague.
Oof.
You with me?
Yeah.
So they don't hit all the plagues, but they mention enough of them. All right. All right. And now we come to the experience of them leaving, and we're going to come to the Red Sea. So verse 52. Then, and by the way, I just want to point out that because this was sung, this is also a way of remembering the history. I mentioned that earlier, but this would have been sung back and forth. So he led out his people like sheep and guided them in the wilderness like a flock. He led them in safety, so they're not afraid. But the sea overwhelmed their enemies, and he brought them to his holy hill, Mount Sinai, if you remember, to the mountain that his right hand had won. He drove out the nations before them. He apportioned them for a possession and settled the tribes of Israel in their tents. Okay, led them out to a land of their own. Okay, and then here we go again, verse 56. All right, yet they tested the Most High God and rebelled against him. They did not observe his decree, but turned away and were faithless like their ancestors. You sensing a theme here?
Yeah.
We save you, you kick us in the face. They twisted like a treacherous bow, for they provoked him to anger in their high places. They moved him to jealousy with their idols. When God heard, he was full of wrath, and he utterly rejected Israel. Okay? He abandoned his dwelling at Shiloh and the tents where he dwelt among mortals, and delivered his power to captivity, his glory to the hand of the foe. Okay, let's stop there for a second for a historical reference. Do you remember what happened at Shiloh?
No.
Right in the center of Israel, the tabernacle at Shiloh. That was the place where they kept the tabernacle in a tent. And it was the place where the palace, if you remember the Philistines, right? Goliath would have been a Philistine. The Philistines attacked them and stole for a time the Ark of the Covenant. If you want to look this up later, we don't have time tonight to go into it, but it's 1 Samuel 4, if you want to look it up later, and it describes what happened, right? The Philistines attacked. God let the Philistines win. They stole the ark, and then they put it among their idols, all right, which was not good for the people of Israel, right? They didn't want their ark to be done. I mean, to be among the Philistines' idols. You with me? Okay. All right. So total destruction, possible end of the seed of Israel. But then let's read on here. He gave his people to the sword and vented his wrath on his own heritage. He let it happen. Fire devoured their young men. Their girls had no marriage song. Their priests fell by the sword, and their widows made no lamentation. This is recounted in 1 Samuel, by the way. Then the Lord as awoke as from a sleep. I love that. I mean, it's sort of funny in a way, but so the Lord lets Israel be utterly destroyed, their priests killed, all the holy things carted off by the Philistines, and all of a sudden the Lord woke up. Oops, what did I just do? All right. So the Lord awoke as from a sleep, like a warrior shouting because of the wine, and then he routed the Philistines. This is recorded in 1 Samuel 4 again. He put his adversaries to rout. He put them to everlasting disgrace. He rejected the tent of Joseph. He did not choose the tribe of Ephraim, but he chose the tribe of Judah, Mount Zion, whom he loves. He built a sanctuary like the high heavens, like the earth where he is found. What are we talking about now? Anybody? In Jerusalem.
Jerusalem, yeah.
What else happened to Samuel eventually? David will slay Goliath, then Saul will become king, then David, then Solomon builds the temple. You with me all here? The history. All right. All right. So he puts that on Judah. Then he chose his servant David, whom he took from the sheepfolds, right?
Yeah.
From tending the nursing ewes, he brought him to be the shepherd of his people, Jacob, of Israel and his parents. With upright heart, he tended them and guided them with skilled hand. And there you have 2,000 years of Israel history, all crammed into Psalm 78. All right. We go clear back to the time of being in the Egypt, led through the wilderness till finally the monarchy is established. and what happened at Shiloh before that. And then David is now appointed as the guardian of Israel. Y'all with me?
Yeah.
All
This
okay.
is really interesting the way it's.
Yeah. Well, and I guess the one thing that I want to point out, because I think it's true throughout, is I don't know how except to say this except to say it this way. It just seems to me that God has sort of a love-hate relationship with the people of Israel, right? It's like sometimes they're enamored with each other and everything's going fine, and then the next day they're fighting. And one day God doesn't want to have anything to do with them, and then God relents and brings them back. And then he brings them back and they sin again. And then he throws them to the Babylonians, and then he brings them home again. And it's this back and forth sort of love-hate romance between the people of God that we know as Abraham's offspring, Isaac and Jacob,
Oh, it's a
and the God of
perfect
Israel.
example of everybody today.
You know, and all of this contained in the Psalm 78 here, the sort of great psalm that traces this history. And you can imagine singing this back and forth. You learn the history by, oh yeah, Shiloh, that's right. Oh yeah, the Red Sea. Oh yeah, that happened. Yeah, exactly. And so,
Forgot about
but
the
it just goes.
Philistines until now. I
What's
forgot
that?
about the Philistines until tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, exactly. So, at any rate, a beautiful psalm. This back and forth relationship is deeply written in this psalm of history about the people of Israel. And it was also history that was important, except they continue to forget it. God loves them, and then they go off and do their own thing and chase after other gods. And this will happen with all the kings of Israel also, all the way down through until finally, after David, they are hauled off to captivity in Babylon. Right? And everybody's killed. And then eventually they come back and build the second temple, blah, blah, blah. But it's just this back and forth all the time. And, if you think about it in the present day, Israel is brought back after the World War II. They establish a nation. They're there for 5 seconds until a war breaks out. They then defend themselves. They get help from the West. But wars continue. And wars continue between Philistines. Who are modern day Philistines, by the way? What's the same word? Palestine. Philistine and Palestine are the same word in Hebrew.
I didn't know that.
Palestine.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you think about who did David fight? It was Goliath, was a Philistine, a Palestinian. And they're still fighting back and forth. The problem today is they're not throwing rocks back and forth, they're throwing bombs and grenades.
Yes. And
to
women and children.
But the same story back and forth. And I can guarantee you that in our lifetime, my guess is this isn't going to be solved. That there will be another eruption of violence between the Philistines, the Palestinians, and the Jews. It's been going on for 3,000 years. I would like there to be peace there. I've been there many times myself, but I don't see it. I pray for the peace of Jerusalem, but when humans are involved, we have this back and forth that we do that's unfortunate. And we don't learn our history. We don't learn. And we repeat it over and over and over again. And sometimes I don't know if it's just, I don't know if it's just because we're human beings and we're just condemned to this over and over again. I don't know. But you would think at some point we would learn to live in a different way, in which we learn to respect people and honor the God who teaches us, what's the Shema? Love the Lord your God with all your heart and mind and soul. And what? And love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
That's the Shema every day. But the problem is the Jewish people don't see the Palestinians as their neighbors. They see them as the enemy. And until they can also see the Palestinians as their neighbors to love, it'll go on and on. It's how do you define your neighbor? I define my neighbor as anybody I run into, whether it's on the street or on the highway or in the grocery store or wherever.
That's right.
I believe everybody, but I don't think we have a world that shares that, unfortunately, and so we erupt into conflict and we go away from God. We take power into our own hands, and this repeats itself over and over and over again. And yet we don't learn. When you think you have all the power and you're going to thrust it upon your enemy, guess what? At some point that comes back on you. And you can go back through the history of entire humanity and see it. This should be a lesson to us here in the United States. Having all the power right now does not mean we will forever. Now, that doesn't mean I wish the United States would be destroyed. I don't wish the United States would be destroyed at all. But I'm just saying, if you look at the history of the world and of human beings, there's a cycle here. And I hope we can learn from the cycle and stop it and have a world community that respects and honors each other. That's what I want. But they're not voting me in as UN General Consul anytime soon, so we'll see. So, but that's my prayer at least. But it just doesn't. You share what I'm saying. It's just like we go at it once again, and we just don't learn that hating people, using power over people, in the end doesn't win us anything. We think it does, but it's momentary, and other things are going to come up again. But we don't seem to learn that, do we? So, any final comments? Now that I'm stepping, can I step back off my soapbox now? Any final comments? Craig? Nope. All right. Well, God be with you. We are halfway through. We're actually a little more than halfway through the Psalter. It's not quite because Psalm 119 is so long. So that's in there somewhere. But the good thing is the latter, like 147, 148, 149, they're short and nice. So coming too. So we now are done till after the new year. Okay.
Really?
And after the new year starts again. So we're done. Well, next week is starting, on the heels of Thanksgiving and stuff, and just December is hard for people. So we'll start again in January.
I'll be cooking.
And present buying and all that stuff and decorating. So we'll begin again in January, so everybody knows that. All right?
Yeah.
Barbara, don't see you before then. Have a wonderful Christmas up there and Thanksgiving up in your neck of the woods.
Thank you. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Same to you.
All of that. We'll see you after the first of the year, okay?
Okie doke.
Thank you.
Okay, blessings.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.